I had the dress, the venue, the ring, but not the groom. The first time Emily Caldwell saw the dress, it was displayed in the corner of a quiet boutique in Soho, soft ivory silk. Minimal lines, no lace, no glitter, just grace. It hung there like a memory she hadn't made yet. She didn't even have a ring then, but something about it pulled her in, made her think, this is what I'd wear if I ever got married. That was 2 years before the engagement, before the unraveling. At 30, Emily had what most people called a dream life. A successful interior designer with her own clients and a small but elegant studio overlooking Manhattan's East Village. She was the kind of woman who made effort look effortless. Her days were filled with palettes and textures, meeting with clients, sourcing vintage furniture, arguing gently with contractors. Her nights, they belonged to Liam. Liam Hayes had walked into her life at a gallery showing in Chelsea. He wasn't loud, didn't dominate the room, but there was a quiet magnetism in the way he observed art, slow, focused, reverent. She watched him stand before a Rothko for 15 minutes, hands folded behind his back, utterly still. When they started talking, it was about color theory and childhood fears. By their third date, he had made her laugh so hard she spilled wine on a white sofa in a showroom. And he covered for her with a wink and an apology to the salesperson. Liam was the kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee and held open cab doors in the rain. He made the world feel manageable. They dated for 3 years before he proposed. It was a cold night in January. Emily had just come back from a brutal client meeting, rich clients. Bad taste, worse tempers. She walked into her apartment and found it lit with candles, the scent of cinnamon and cedar in the air. Liam was in the kitchen, burning something he optimistically called dinner. He got down on one knee, not in a 5-star restaurant, but in the cramped kitchen they shared, beside a stack of unopened mail and a dish rack. And somehow, it felt perfect. She called Jade first. Jade Porter had been Emily's best friend since freshman year of college. Dorm mates turned soulmates. They had navigated heartbreaks, internships, and bad bangs together. Jade was the kind of friend who knew when you were about to cry before you did. She had been there when Emily lost her father to pancreatic cancer. And Emily had held her hair back through more tequila-fueled breakups than she could count. Jade was an event planner, efficient, detail-obsessed, and charming. Naturally, she became the maid of honor. The next 6 months passed in a flurry of fittings, tastings, and spreadsheets. Emily, though normally minimalist and modern, found herself swooning over garden-themed venues and gold-foiled invitation designs. Jade handled everything, from the calligraphy on the name cards to managing an overbearing future mother-in-law. She was, as always, perfect, too perfect. Looking back, the signs weren't obvious, just off. Liam started canceling date nights, late meetings. He'd say, just swamped. He became less present, his phone always buzzing. Emily chalked it up to pre-wedding nerves. She had hers too, doubts that crept in late at night. Half whispered to herself, only to be shushed with thoughts of honeymoons and forever. 1 month before the wedding, Liam said he needed to talk. They were at their favorite cafe, the one with uneven floored tiles and cappuccinos she always complained were too bitter. He looked tired, not in the physical sense, but spiritually worn. He stirred his coffee for a long time before speaking. I think we should postpone the wedding, he said. Not, cancel, not, I can't do this. Just a pause, a soft interruption. Emily blinked. Why? I don't know. It's all moving too fast. I'm not. Right, I need to work through some things. She wanted to scream. Instead, she sipped her coffee and nodded. Okay. She cried in the bathroom of the cafe, then again in the cab, then silently while folding laundry that night. But she didn't fight him. She told herself love took patience, and space could be healing. They would find their way back. Jade was, predictably, supportive. That's hard, she said, wrapping Emily in a hug. But maybe it's just stress. He loves you. I see it. Give him time. Jade began visiting more often. She helped Emily reorganize her mood boards, brought over wine and scented candles, suggested they take a girls' trip to clear her head. Emily was grateful. She told herself Jade's kindness was proof that she wasn't alone. 2 weeks later, Emily noticed their joint savings account had been emptied. At first, she assumed it was a mistake. She called the bank. They confirmed a full withdrawal by Liam, authorized by both names. A cold panic set in. She called him, voicemail. Texted, no reply. Went to his office, he had resigned. No forwarding address. Jade wasn't answering either. It was 3 days of silence, spiraling thoughts, and sleepless nights before the message came. A mutual acquaintance, a girl named Trina who had gone to college with him, sent her a DM on Instagram. Hey, is it true you and Liam broke up? I saw this and thought it had to be a prank. Attached was a photo. Vegas, a small chapel, neon lights, Liam and Jade, in white. The image didn't register at first. Emily stared at it, numb. It was Jade in a short, satin dress, holding a bouquet of pink roses. Liam in a pale gray suit, the kind he swore he hated. They were smiling. Her ring, Emily's ring, was on Jade's finger. She dropped her phone. Everything else dropped with it. It wasn't just betrayal, it was annihilation. The following days passed in a blur. She deleted her social media, blocked numbers, ignored voicemails. The apartment felt like a crime scene. Every drawer she opened had Liam in it, his cologne, his socks, his stupid collection of novelty mugs. Jade's presence lingered too, in the wedding planner notebooks, in the printouts on the fridge, in the bridesmaid dress still hanging behind the door. She didn't eat, she barely slept. When her mother called, she couldn't speak. When her sister came over with ice cream and tissues, she stared blankly at the wall. There was no fight in her, just silence. It was a month later, sitting on a park bench in Central Park, watching a woman play cello near Bethesda Terrace, that something cracked. She remembered her father once told her, if someone takes everything from you, make something they can't ever touch. The next morning, Emily booked a one-way flight to Florence. She didn't tell anyone, just packed a suitcase, shut the door behind her, and left. What she didn't know, what neither Jade nor Liam could have imagined, was that the woman they tried to erase wasn't gone. She was just getting started. I didn't pack revenge, I packed silence. There was something strangely liberating about selling everything. Emily had expected to feel grief, regret, or even panic as she dismantled the life she'd built over a decade in New York. But as she watched the moving truck pull away, carrying the last box of her former existence, all she felt was a heavy, echoing quiet, the kind that settles deep inside your bones. The apartment, stripped of its personality, looked smaller, without the curated furniture, the gallery wall, the houseplants she'd once spoken to after long days. It was just square footage and drywall, a place where dreams had once lived and died. She took one last look at the space, then turned the key in the lock without hesitation. Florence had always been a fantasy, one she used to whisper about with her college roommates. Imagining herself in linen dresses, sketching buildings on parchment, sipping espresso while watching tourists spill onto ancient streets. But life happened. Career paths hardened into concrete. Liam had hated the idea of moving abroad, said it was impractical, too far, too unfamiliar. What would you even do there? He once asked, laughing. Now, finally, Emily had no one to ask permission from. The first days in Florence passed like a dream filtered through fog. Her Airbnb was a modest studio tucked above a bakery in Oltrano, where the smell of fresh bread slipped through her window each morning before the sun fully rose. The ceiling had wooden beams, the kind she used to drool over in architectural magazines, and the floor creaked in a way that made the place feel older than time. But even beauty can't quiet a broken heart. She wandered the streets in a daze, camera in hand but rarely clicking. The Duomo felt too grand, the river Arno too still. Her days were punctuated by bursts of tears she couldn't always explain, triggered by the sound of laughter echoing in alleyways. or the sight of couples sharing gelato. She didn't speak much Italian, though she'd taken a few classes years back. Still, she liked the language's rhythm. It felt like music wrapped in vowels. She practiced with her landlady, an older woman named Marta who had a scarlet headband and always insisted Emily take leftover pastries. Mangja, Cara, you look too thin. She was too thin. Food didn't taste the same. Sleep came in broken pieces. Some nights she dreamed of Jade and Liam, their faces morphing in impossible ways. Other nights she dreamed of being underwater, unable to scream. Emily tried journaling, meditating, even running. Nothing helped. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was existential. Who was she? If she had missed signs that clear? If she had poured years into a love that turned out to be theater? The betrayal by Liam cut deep. But Jade's betrayal was surgical. Precise. It was the weapon wielded by someone who knew her best. And yet, Emily didn't want revenge. Not really. She didn't fantasize about ruining them or showing up with success like armor. What she wanted was to stop replaying everything. To stop imagining what she could have said, done, changed. One afternoon, after wandering aimlessly through San Lorenzo, she stumbled into a gallery. It wasn't planned. She had meant to buy olive oil. Instead, she found herself in a cool, white space filled with antique furniture and curated installations that blurred the line between art and living. A chair draped in lace, lit as if it were a sculpture. A fireplace mantel filled with cracked porcelain hands. It was bizarre, beautiful, and strangely comforting. She lingered over a piece titled, Recovery. A cracked mirror framed in brass, with phrases etched along the fractures. Remember. Remain. Release. Powerful, isn't it? A voice said behind her. She turned to find a man. Tall, mid-40s perhaps, with silver threads in his dark hair and a presence that didn't demand attention, but invited it. His Italian accent was soft but unmistakable. It is, she replied. It's the first thing I've looked at in weeks without wanting to cry. He smiled, but not in pity. That's a start. They spoke for 10 minutes. Then 20, then an hour. His name was Alessandro De Luca, owner of the gallery and founder of a growing chain of boutique hotels across Europe. His background was in hospitality, but his soul was in design. They traded stories, carefully curated ones. Emily never mentioned Liam or Jade. Alessandro didn't pry. Instead, they spoke about chairs, about the ethics of restoration, about the difference between decoration and curation. Alessandro listened with the kind of attention Emily hadn't felt in years. He didn't interrupt. He didn't steer the conversation to himself. He simply received. As the gallery closed, he handed her a card. I'm opening another gallery in Rome next spring, he said. It's a little different, part installation, part concept hotel. We're looking for a design consultant. Nothing formal, just come by sometime. Emily took the card, didn't promise anything. That night, she looked him up. Alessandro De Luca wasn't just successful. He was celebrated. Features in design journals, a TED talk on aesthetic as emotion, awards for his hotel concepts, all of which focused on narrative-based design, each room telling a story. The next morning, she returned to the gallery. They walked through the space again. This time, he asked her opinion, not politely, but with genuine curiosity. Emily, despite herself, responded honestly. She suggested re-angling a lighting installation, noted a slight imbalance in a color palette, pointed out a frame that clashed subtly with the tile work. He didn't argue, he listened. Then he smiled. Would you consider consulting? It was the first time anyone had asked her to build something since everything had been destroyed. She said yes. What followed were weeks of quiet collaboration. Alessandro wasn't pushy. Their working relationship was one of rhythm and respect. Some days they didn't speak much, just worked in parallel. Other days they wandered Florence's antique markets, trading thoughts over espresso and sunlight. Emily felt herself slowly stitching together again, not fast, not completely, but genuinely. There was no grand epiphany, no moment where the pain disappeared. But one day she realized she had gone hours, then a full day, without thinking about the wedding. Or the chapel in Vegas. Or Jade's eyes. She didn't know where things with Alessandro were going. Maybe nowhere, maybe friendship, maybe more. What she did know was that for the first time in a long time, she wasn't trying to outrun her past. She was walking into her future. And the silence she had packed with her, it was slowly being replaced by something she hadn't dared hope for. Possibility. His silence wasn't empty, it held space for me to breathe. The first time Alessandro touched Emily's hand, it wasn't deliberate. They were seated at a narrow bistro table in a sun-drenched cafe in Lisbon, both reaching for the same sugar packet. Their fingers brushed, and neither pulled away immediately. There was no spark, no cinematic swell of music, only the simplicity of shared warmth. And the quiet understanding that sometimes connection doesn't have to announce itself. It simply arrives and waits. Over the next 3 years, their lives intertwined like climbing ivy, slow, steady, and quietly determined. They worked together on galleries in Rome, Vienna, Santorini, and Dubrovnik, each city a new layer in their evolving story. Alessandro never rushed her. There was no grand pursuit, no declarations of love in the moonlight. He simply showed up, consistently, with a kind of patience that made Emily feel less like a woman who had been broken, and more like someone worth waiting for. In Vienna, he brought her tea when she lost her voice during a week of back-to-back meetings. In Santorini, he found a way to source antique Grecian tiles after she'd mentioned, only once, how much she loved the faded cobalt color. In Rome, when she cried during a heated conversation about a broken sculpture that reminded her too much of herself, he didn't try to fix it. He just sat beside her until she was ready to speak. There was no dramatic shift when friendship became something more. It unfolded slowly, like light at dawn. She started noticing the way his hands moved when he explained an idea, how his eyes softened when she laughed. He began brushing her shoulder when they passed through narrow doorways, walking on the outer edge of the sidewalk without fanfare, ordering a second espresso even when he didn't want one, just to stay longer with her. Still, Emily hesitated. She hadn't told Alessandro about Liam, or Jade, not fully. He knew there had been a betrayal, that she had left New York with more wounds than luggage. But she kept the names tucked inside like shards of glass, too dangerous to handle. One evening in Tuscany, while overseeing the restoration of a villa-turned-gallery nestled among lavender fields, Alessandro invited her to the rooftop terrace. The sky was awash in apricot and rose. Below, the workers were packing up for the day, the golden light casting long shadows on stone. He handed her a glass of wine and didn't say anything for a long time. Then, gently, "I don't need to know everything you've been through, but if you ever want to tell me, I'll listen, and if you don't, I'll still be here." Emily felt something shift inside her. Not a crack or a collapse, more like a door swinging open after being shut too long. She didn't speak that night, but she didn't run either. Their first kiss was quiet. It happened after they'd finished assembling a collection in Prague, a late night. Bare feet on cold marble, fingers stained with paint and dust. She turned to say something, and he was there, not asking, just present. When their lips met, it wasn't electric, it was anchoring, the kind of kiss that says, "You're safe now." They didn't define the relationship immediately. There was no need. Their lives had already become entangled in the best ways. He left her notes in sketchbooks. She brought him coffee without asking. They argued about color theory and music but never stormed out. He learned the names of her childhood pets. She memorized how he liked his ties folded when they traveled. Emily began sleeping through the night again. The nightmares faded. Not entirely, but enough. She started humming to herself while sketching, smiling at strangers. The gallery staff noticed first. Marta, the landlady from Florence, called and said, "Your voice sounds full again." One summer, as the lavender reached its peak bloom, Alessandro asked her to walk with him before dinner. They took the long way around the property, past the cypress trees and old stone walls, the scent of rosemary trailing behind them. On the balcony of the villa, where the sun cast a golden veil over the hills. He stopped. "You've given so much to this place," he said, "to these spaces, to me, but I need to ask, would you give me one more thing?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, velvet box. Inside was a ring, not extravagant, but thoughtful, a vintage setting with a deep sapphire stone and 2 tiny diamonds, flanked by curves of white gold. Emily didn't cry, she didn't gasp, she breathed. Then she nodded. They married 6 months later in a quiet ceremony with only 12 guests, friends they'd made through work, Marta, and 2 local musicians who played a string arrangement of Leonard Cohen's "Dance Me to the End of Love." Emily wore a silk dress she had designed herself, with sleeves that whispered against her skin. There were no bridesmaids, no flower arch, no first dance, only vows spoken under olive trees, and the kind of silence that holds meaning rather than absence. She didn't tell anyone from New York, not because of fear or shame, but because it wasn't about them. This love wasn't performative. It didn't need to be announced. It just needed to be lived. Alessandro suggested she officially become a co-founder of the gallery initiative. He had already made it hers in everything but title. She accepted. Her name now appeared on design documents, press releases, and exhibition panels. There were still days when ghosts knocked. She'd see a tall man in a crowd and freeze, smell a particular cologne and feel her stomach twist, wake from dreams with Jade's voice echoing in her head. But they no longer owned her. They were echoes, not anchors. One morning, while preparing for a gallery opening in Amsterdam, Alessandro caught her staring out the window, lost in thought. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. She leaned back into him. "That I never thought I'd feel safe again. And now I know safety isn't the absence of pain. It's the presence of someone who doesn't run." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. His silence wasn't empty. It held space for her to breathe. Karma doesn't always knock. Sometimes it walks in wearing heels. The first time Emily saw her name in print again, it was on the inside flap of an architecture magazine folded neatly on a cafe table in Milan. She wasn't even the one who noticed it. Alessandro did, nudging the glossy paper toward her with a grin. There it was. Emily De Luca, the soul behind the spaces. A 2-page spread detailing her minimalist philosophy, her collaborations with cultural landmarks across Europe, and a carefully cropped photo of her mid-laugh. Head turned toward light. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. It wasn't vanity. It was the surreal awareness that somewhere between Tuscany sunsets and design deadlines, she had become someone else. Or perhaps she had become more herself than ever. The woman in the article wasn't the one who had stood crying in a New York bathroom, clutching a phone and a wedding dress bag. This woman had survived, built, loved. So when Alessandro suggested opening their newest gallery in New York, the city she had once fled, Emily didn't flinch. "Are you sure?" he asked, watching her carefully. She nodded. "Yes, I want to walk into the room this time." The gallery was planned as their most ambitious space yet, a hybrid of installation art and interior experience, designed to evoke emotional recovery through texture, scent, and lighting. It was nestled inside a renovated bank building in Tribeca, all arched ceilings and steel beams, reclaimed wood floors softened by curved walls and cascading light fixtures. Press coverage started early, whispers of a European design visionary returning to her roots. Invitations went out to critics, curators, investors, and design influencers. Articles bloomed across platforms. The return of Emily Caldwell, now De Luca. From ruin to radiance, the woman behind the Florence Project. Healing spaces, when art meets interior therapy. Emily approved them all without flinching. She wore her name like armor now. Opening night was scheduled for mid-September. New York was humming with post-summer energy, and the city itself seemed to dress for the occasion, skies clear, air crisp, energy electric. The guest list ballooned past expectations. A red carpet, step and repeat backdrops, cameramen, crystal glasses. Emily arrived early, wearing black satin with structured shoulders and minimal jewelry. Her hair was swept into a low chignon. She looked powerful, composed, every inch of her styled to whisper, "This is not the woman you remember." Alessandro, in his tailored navy tuxedo, kissed her hand before stepping into his role as host. They moved through the gallery separately at first, greeting guests, answering press questions. The space filled quickly, voices bouncing against curated soundscapes and perfume notes of sandalwood and iris. Emily's installation room was the centerpiece. Titled, Stillness, it was built like a quiet cathedral of light, layered with organic shapes and reclaimed materials. There were no signs, only sensations. People lingered, some cried, others simply sat on the low benches, exhaling as if they hadn't realized they'd been holding breath. Emily's speech was scheduled for 8:30. She stepped backstage at 8:15 to center herself. She didn't feel nervous, she felt ready, and then she saw them. Jade entered first, in a crimson dress that shimmered under the gallery's filtered lighting. Her hair was perfectly curled, her walk confident, practiced. Liam followed, one step behind, wearing a gray suit that hung a little too loose at the shoulders. His eyes darted around, assessing. Emily stood in the shadows, unseen. They had no idea. Jade glanced at a brochure, clearly expecting to see Alessandro's name alone. She nudged Liam, who looked unimpressed. "This is that Italian investor I told you about," she whispered, too close to the mic on her lapel. Emily felt a strange calm. There was no rage, just distance, as if they were actors in a play she had long stopped watching. She stepped onto the stage at 8:28. The room dimmed, spotlights shifted, and as the MC introduced Alessandro De Luca, the crowd turned. He took the microphone with ease, thanking guests, praising the collaborative process, speaking with his signature grace and humility. Then he smiled, and the tone of his voice softened. "Tonight is special for many reasons. This gallery is not only a space, it is a journey. One that would not exist without the heart and vision of the woman who designed every curve, every shadow, every silence. She is not just my partner in creation. She is my partner in life." He extended his hand. "Please welcome my wife, Emily De Luca." The applause erupted, flashbulbs fired, but all Emily saw was Jade. Her smile froze first, then her knees buckled. Liam caught her elbow as her face drained of color. Emily walked to the podium, steady as stone. Her heels clicked softly, each step an echo of survival. She didn't look at Jade. Not directly. She didn't need to. Her speech was short, heartfelt, unshakable. She spoke of spaces as vessels for emotion, of the necessity of stillness after storm, of the healing that happens when you stop explaining your pain and start building something better. People cried. Jade didn't. She sat stiffly through the rest of the event, avoiding Emily's gaze, her body language folded inwards. Liam looked bored, or maybe bitter. Emily couldn't tell. She didn't care. Later that night, as the final guests trickled out and the staff dimmed the lights, Alessandro found her by the window. They looked out over the city together, this city that once held her worst memories. Now, it held her triumph. "Karma," Alessandro said quietly, "has impeccable timing." Emily smiled. "And excellent taste in husbands." He laughed, kissing her temple. Outside, the city shimmered. Inside, a woman who had once been left at the altar stood in a space she had created from dust. Karma hadn't knocked. It had walked in wearing heels. And this time, it belonged to her. "She took my past, I took her future." The gallery had long since quieted, the echo of applause fading into the marble walls like perfume into silk. Empty champagne flutes stood on slender trays. Abandoned, velvet heels were left resting against the bases of sculptures. The lighting dimmed to its ambient setting, casting gentle shadows across the curated curves of Emily's designs. Emily stood near the installation room, arms crossed, gazing up at the suspended glass sculpture she had named Weightless. It hung delicately from copper wires, each shard balanced against the others, refracting fragments of light like frozen breath. The irony wasn't lost on her. It took years of carrying pain to learn how to place it somewhere beautiful. Behind her, the sound of tentative footsteps. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Emily. Jade's voice came low, almost breathless. Emily turned slowly. Jade looked wrong, not undone exactly. Her hair was still immaculate, makeup flawless, but something inside her was out of place. Like a picture frame slightly askew. Her eyes darted around, unwilling to land too long on Emily's. "I wasn't sure you'd want to talk," Jade began, clasping her clutch in both hands. "But well, I couldn't just leave, not after tonight." Emily said nothing. Jade exhaled sharply, trying again. "You look stunning, truly, and the gallery, it's remarkable. I didn't know you were married. Or that Alessandro was." She stopped herself. Emily raised an eyebrow. Jade swallowed. "He's the investor who turned Liam down last year. We pitched a platform for digital art leasing. He said it lacked heart. That he only funds what moves him. We almost lost everything. I had to sell the car. Liam took a second mortgage on his mother's house." There was a sharpness in her voice now. Not anger, but something closer to bewildered jealousy. She hadn't expected this version of Emily. Not the one whose husband wielded both taste and power. Not the one with influence, applause, and press coverage. "Anyway," Jade said, forcing a shaky smile, "I just thought you should know. I'm happy for you, really. It's good to see you doing well." Emily stepped forward, tilting her head. Her voice was soft but precise. "Don't faint again. There are still more galleries to open." Jade blinked. What?" But Emily was already walking past her. In the distance, Alessandro waited with 2 glasses of champagne, one already warming in his hand. His expression softened as she approached, offering her the drink with the easy intimacy of someone who knew the shape of her thoughts. "She approached you?" he asked gently. Emily nodded. He didn't press further. They stood side by side at the massive glass window overlooking Franklin Street. Outside, the city glowed with late-night life, taxis weaving, neon signs blinking against the dark. Their reflections stared back at them, haloed in gallery light. Behind them, across the room, Jade and Liam remained. She was sitting now, ankles crossed, arms rigid in her lap. Liam scrolled through his phone, uninterested, disconnected, as if the magnitude of the evening had missed him entirely. They looked smaller somehow, dimmer, like echoes from a life that no longer belonged to Emily. Emily turned to Alessandro. "Do you remember when I told you I didn't want revenge?" He nodded, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Yes, you said you wanted peace. I think I have it now." He smiled. "You built it." They left hand in hand, walking slowly down the steps of the gallery and into the pulse of the city. Paparazzi lights flashed. Someone called her name. Alessandro lifted his arm in greeting. But Emily kept her gaze forward. At the end of the block, she paused and glanced back once. Through the glass wall of the gallery, Jade and Liam were still there, sitting together, yet miles apart, framed by the architecture Emily had dreamed, designed, and delivered. They were silhouettes now, quiet, uncertain, flickering at the edges like shadows too faint to anchor. Emily turned back to Alessandro, her grip tightening around his hand. "I'm ready," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For what's next?" And they kept walking, not toward vengeance, not toward validation, but toward the life Emily had built from the rubble they once left her in. She had no need to take back the past, because she had already taken the future.